That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The Inspection, the directorial debut of Elegance Bratton, which premiered at the 2022 Toronto International Film Festival and is being released courtesy of A24 on November 18th, 2022.
Overall, I like this movie.
Same.
Elegance, the director, this is based on his story.
It's inspired by true events.
It's basically this young man named Ellis who joins the Marines at 25 in the year 2005, and we see him go through boot camp. Mm-hmm. He completes it and graduates. The end.
Sure. There's a very bare bones synopsis.
It is, but so the film starts with Ellis in a homeless shelter. Mm-hmm. We find out that he's been out of his mother's house since he was 16. So, but we don't know how long he was in this homeless shelter. He gets up one day, gets dressed, and goes to his mom's apartment. He needs his birth certificate because he wants to enroll in the Marines. And when he gets to his mom's place, it is very clear she is not happy to see him. The mom is played by Gabrielle Union,
who's also executive producer. Inez French is her name.
And she is not happy to see her son. And basically tells him, like, you can have your birth certificate, but if you don't come back to me, like, as the boy I gave birth to, don't even bother coming back. He goes off to boot camp. And the story is kind of what I would expect from a gay black man joining the Marines and going through boot camp. Like, there's a lot of homophobia. He's attacked. There's derogatory language used towards him. His, like, drill sergeant is an asshole. But ultimately, he proves himself by being tough, which is what the drill sergeant wanted all along. Mm-hmm. And then we see all of his, troop, his, what do you call them when they're all together? Fellow soldiers. Mm-hmm. They support him. So at the graduation, we only see Gabrielle Union in the very beginning, the very end, and then at one point in the middle, when Ellis calls her to say, please come to my graduation. Mm-hmm. She does. She greets him. She seems happy. He has like a month in between graduation and when he has to go off to like his first job. And he's been assigned as like the official photographer. So the mom seems very excited. But then she does that thing that many gay people are very familiar with when their family members sort of pretend they're not gay. Mm-hmm. And the mom goes, oh, imagine all the beautiful young ladies who are going to want to be with you now that you have this uniform. And he's like, I'm gay. I'm still gay. Nothing has changed. And the mom causes a scene at this graduation dinner. Mm-hmm. Basically saying, like, y'all know he's gay. You had no business even letting him into the Marines. Like, just being real crazy. And then his drill sergeant, played by Bokeem Woodbine, comes over and tells the mom, like, you need to settle down. And she's like, you know he's gay. Why would you even let him graduate? And he says, that's not for me to ask. And it wasn't for him to say. And all I know is he is a good Marine. And that's when all of his fellow Marines get up and basically support him. And then the final scene is, because the mom runs out, he chases her and says, I am never going to give up on you. And she goes, well, I'll always love you, but I don't love who you are. The end. It was a heavy story. It wasn't as traumatic as some similar stories have been.
No, it's very by the numbers, very workmanlike. And if you're expecting
very
something
what-like?
Workmanlike,
okay.
It's very kind of a routine based on our familiarity with other similar stories.
Yes.
I mean, it's not going gonzo like Full Metal Jacket, which I think the best part of that Kubrick film is until boot camp ends, or something like Mafi, which we reviewed recently, the South African film from Oliver Hermanus. I think a part of what's throwing me off is how A24 is deciding to market this as something is inspired by true events, when it's really kind of a memoir of a transitional time,
a chapter
in someone's life. So I think, I think back to something like This Boy's Life, which is also a memoir with Leonardo DiCaprio and Ellen Barkin. And like, would we have put that marketing on that film?
I agree with the trailer sort of misleading me. I was expecting sort of a more comprehensive look at this young man's life. and we really just get this 3-month period, which is very condensed, with him being in boot camp, which I still enjoyed. But yeah, what I got was very different from what I thought I was getting based on the trailer.
That I think Jeremy Pope gives a very fine lead performance.
I did enjoy him.
Liked him on screen. Who was in? He had a 6-episode character arc in Pose. I've always been a fan of Bokeem Woodbine, and as the training instructor, I think he is a fantastic casting.
I don't think I've ever seen him as something I didn't enjoy him in.
I've loved him since Freeway, but he's my favorite part of Queen and Slim.
Oh yes. He does a good job. I think the performances from everyone. I think the weakest part of the movie for me is I think Gabrielle Union is miscast. Because, and you've talked about this before, but I think it's two things. One, we bring in a certain amount of baggage if we know who Gabrielle Union is, because I think we all see her, for those who are familiar with her, as a very sort of progressive, supportive person to the LGBTQ plus community, and she has a queer/trans child. So to see her play this role, it's important to know also we saw this at a screening where she and the filmmaker were part of a Q&A. And I think hearing them talk about the film provided a lot of good context. And I understand her reasoning for why she wanted to do this based on her own words.
Well, no, originally she was reluctant to do it.
Right, but her decision to do it makes sense to me. I just think that I couldn't not see her, and then because I have this thought about who she is in reality, and then this kind of really almost sinister character, it almost played like, to be honest, watching her in the 2 scenes we get her in, it seemed like she was almost like mentally ill.
Sure.
Like it just seems crazy that this woman is talking this way. The opening scene, she's in this like dirty ass apartment, cooking what looked like fried catfish, macaroni and cheese and greens, smoking a cigarette, her like listening to like a gospel sermon. And I think based on everything I saw, I expected a different actor.
Sure.
Kind of like, I don't know.
You wanted her to be like Monique and Precious.
Kind of, yeah. Like it just like looking at her, it just didn't match. And then of course, Gabrielle Union is a gorgeous woman, so they make her look kind of dowdy, and they make her skin look ruddy, and she has bad hair.
They put this like sheen of large pores that you can almost kind of see it.
And I thought it was a little distracting. Then in the end, when she switches up on her son, I think for those of us who are part of this community, we've all experienced that with family where they sort of like, they're okay until they're not, right? Like you say something they don't agree with and they turn on you. That makes sense to me.
Well, or that's that kind of slide pushing you back into the closet, which is what she's doing. She's shutting the closet
So
doors
the
on him.
character makes sense to me, but still, I just thought that she seemed, because I still keep looking, and then the way Gabrielle's acting, like kind of the faces she's making, it almost seems like she's joking.
I think the scene where I had the hardest time with her performance is that final scene, because first we have like all that humming and hawing over how the lobster's cooked, and then the way she's responding to her son is like she wants to eat him like a snack. She is like, I gotta get you home.
Yeah,
it's very like, oh, why?
But so the point of all that was, I feel like that character is sort of odd to me. And then even like when her son comes home, he wants to sit down, and she like is like, oh, hold on, and she grabs newspaper and puts it down on the couch because like he's dirty. But then your apartment's dirty, and then you're kind of dirty, like just chain smoking with like this ruddy ass skin. And then we see her in the end at the graduation, and she's driving a Lexus, but then it's dirty. So I just felt like she just seems, ultimately, based on the Q&A, based on watching the movie, I feel like there's so much more to the relationship between this man and this woman, like mother, son, that we do not get.
Yeah, it feels like
I feel like we needed that.
I feel like a lot of the dysfunction of their relationship was probably cut out, and maybe that's because, this took 6 years for him to make, and Bratton mentioned there were a lot of drafts. So I can imagine a lot of kind of the more, maybe even more unseemly things were kind of whittled away. But going back to what you're referring to is approaching outside baggage as reception theory, is what we know about Gabrielle Union. And I think there's a way to obviously overcome that, because I thought initially the same of having to watch Sigourney Weaver in Prayers for Bobby. And play a very similar kind of parent, whereas I think she kind of overcomes that. And I will say there were other women I was thinking of that probably would have done that role more justice. Like I was thinking somebody that has a little more of a hard edge to her when she wants to, like Yolanda Ross, or even more interesting, like somebody who's generally kind of soft but can play wicked, like a Kimberly Elise.
Oh, I was thinking Kimberly Elise.
I think could have been really good.
Yeah.
But again, this is, somebody that's cast her specifically to play his mother. So I had like qualms about white Michelle Williams playing Steven Spielberg's mom, but in The Fabelmans. But it's like, well, that's who you chose to play your mom.
Sure,
so
yeah.
You would know.
Of course, if you're making an independent film that you've struggled to make and Gabrielle Union agrees to be in it, like, of course you would, that's the reason you choose her. You wouldn't say no.
Sure. And there probably might be some comparisons to the Naomi Harris character in Moonlight, but what I kind of wanted the feeling to be, I think that it was leaning towards something like Anne Bancroft in Torch Song Trilogy. Oh,
sure. Okay, so there are some key people within his like boot camp troupe. So his, I guess like the guy in charge, the major, Bokeem Woodbine. Then the second in charge is played by Raúl Castillo, and then there's another second in charge played by this white guy whose name I don't remember. He was real crazy. He was like almost like comedy level, like just shouting and screaming everything, but it was effective. Then some of his fellow soldiers. There's a Muslim guy who he sort of connects with on the way to boot camp because he gets picked on.
Ismail, yep.
Ismail, who I liked, and then Ismail got picked on the bus by this guy who's kind of like a thug, I guess. And there's a funny scene with him because he's acting all tough. And then very quickly he's made like the troop or the what do you call people in charge? The troop leader?
The training instructor.
Or is that Boy Scouts?
The training instructor.
The training instructor make him cry. I thought that was a good scene because then he kind of softens. And then we have the fellow soldier who becomes like the troop leader. Do you know who plays that guy?
Harvey. McCaul Lombardi, who you should recognize from Port Authority.
Is he the one who falls in love with the trans girl?
No.
Oh.
Lena Bloom. He's the one that is hiring the guy that's white boy realness to go evict all those people.
That's him.
He's the one that like picks him up the street and puts him in the...
That's right. That's right. I liked him. He plays a bully who gets his just desserts, which was a very satisfying scene. But so the filmmaker explained that because of course the Marines did not support the making of this film, so he had to find a place to shoot as the boot camp, which was, I guess the actual place he went to boot camp is called Parris Island. So he found a police academy training center that is run by someone who also went to Parris Island, and that person designed it kind of like that. So I thought that was very interesting context. But I thought it was very effective that we see boot camp through the eyes of this 25-year-old gay black man. And I appreciated that there are several scenes where it's sort of like fantasy of like him being sexual or seeing his fellow soldiers in a more sexual way that I thought was very effective. Like there's a scene early on where he's taking a shower in the communal showers and he gets lost in his head and starts fantasizing about all the naked men. Then it turns into like a bathhouse scene. And then all of a sudden we're knocked out of it because one of the guys is like, yo, he has a boner. And then everyone's freaked out. And then Bokeem Woodbine's character basically sets it up like, I'm going to walk away and you boys beat his ass up. So they beat him up. They sort of isolate him for a while, but then Ellis works his way back in with the guys by proving himself. Like he gets tougher, he speaks up for himself. There's a moment when he
almost dies,
where Bokeem's character basically like drowns him because he's explaining like the hardest thing to do is save a man who's drowning because he'll attack you, and that's what Bokeem does. So Ellis has to be resuscitated. And then there's this big scene where he's saying, I'm going to file a report. And then Raúl Castillo's character takes Ellis saying, I'm going to support you reporting him. But then they have a conversation, which I thought was quite good. And then getting to Raúl Castillo's character, part of the fantasy is that we get two scenes where Ellis is imagining having sex with Raúl Castillo's character. But then we also get Raúl being very gentle and kind to Ellis, but then ultimately we find out he's not gay. And I thought that was like a really sweet moment. And I thought it was effective in showing maybe how, this gay guy was just, he was just crushing on his drill sergeant, and, and that person was being kind to him. So I thought that was sweet. So the person who was interviewing the filmmaker and Gab Union in the Q&A had said that he liked that they don't explain why he wanted to join the Marines, which I thought was weird because Ellis does say why he wants to join the Marines, which I thought was a very good answer. He says, like, I'm gay, I'm black, I'm a gay black man, like, no one gives a shit about me. But if I die in this uniform, I'll be a hero to somebody. And I thought that was pretty powerful in a really succinct way of sort of answering that question, because I think we all who, like, I think most gay people, specifically like my age or older, when I had friends who would go off to the military, it's like, why would you do that? So I think this movie does a really good job of answering that question.
Well, in the Q&A, he suggested there was an alternative reason for entering, which was to prove his mother wrong, because she thought that experience would make him straight.
Oh, sure, yes. Getting back to the fantasy, we get another scene where, and I don't know if it was real or imagined, but Ellis is on like night watch duty, and he's walking through the barracks, I guess, and like everyone's masturbating
because they just received some pornography.
Because they all received their like weekly mail, and there was porn in it. I thought that was fun. There's a scene where they all have to go to church, and the Muslim gentleman is getting emotional because like he doesn't believe in this. He's being forced to do it, and then there's a moment where he runs off. Ellis joins him, and they sort of commiserate, and then they confront that one crazy ass drill sergeant, like. And then that segues into Raúl Castillo's character on his cell phone arguing with like his lady. Yeah. And then Ellis consoles him. I thought that was all very well done. I thought a funny moment was when Bokeem lets them watch a movie, and it's Jarheads, and he says this is the best representation of the Marines on film. Have you seen that movie?
With Jake Gyllenhaal, yeah. Jarhead, years ago when it came out. But I thought that was porn that was playing.
Well, the credits of the film acknowledge the use of the movie Jarheads. Oh, okay. So I think it's just Jarhead. I did also see porn, but I thought that was something separate.
Oh, maybe it was. I don't know.
Anyway.
I think time moves by strangely in this film.
Oh, yeah. Because it's 3 months, but it feels...
It feels like kind of... the greatest hits of certain vignette moments.
Which is interesting because the bulk of the movie is him in boot camp. So it is interesting that almost the entire movie is about him in boot camp, but it feels like we're seeing a very small...
I feel like there's so many more things before and after this film starts about this person that I'm interested in. Like, how he had come to live in a homeless shelter. For how long was he there? I'm interested in his other experiences that shaped him as well.
Well, especially because we found out at the Q&A that like while
he was gathering finances, which seems to take forever, his mother died.
Yeah, his sister killed his mother. So the filmmaker Elegance Bratton seems like a very interesting person with a lot more personal stories to tell, and I would definitely watch another film this person does.
Yes, and I'm curious to know what the original title might have been, because The Inspection doesn't really do much for me as a title. But...
Also, when they actually have their final inspection before graduation, and I know nothing about the Marines, it was really weird because it essentially looked like a colonel walks in, and like the actual like highly decorated person is taking measurements of everyone, like he's gonna fit them for a suit, and then he goes, "Oh, you all passed inspection." I thought that was... It was weird, but not in like a bad way. It just... Because maybe that's a representation of how weird this experience really is for someone like him. Like, it's just none of it makes sense for him, but here we are. What else do you have?
That's it.
What would you give it?
Oh, did you like it? I thought it was shot well. Lachlan Milne was the cinematographer who shot Minari and Little Monsters with Lupita.
I did like how the movie looked, although I failed to catch in the opening that it was set in 2005.
Trenton, 2005, yep.
So I assumed this was in the 90s.
Sure. Well,
until I saw a cell phone.
More production design then.
Yeah, but I think it still looks great.
And then notably Animal Collective did the score. But yeah, I would give it 3 out of 5.
I would give it 3 out of 5 as well. Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.